Okay, let's talk about visas in Germany and this time specifically about the regular work visa. This regular work visa is for anyone who wants to, work in Germany and already has a job contract or a job offer and does not fulfill the requirements needed for an EU blue card. If you want to know more about the EU blue card, there is a separate video and a separate page in the app for the EU blue card. This regular work visa requires a bit more of work. The process takes a little longer. The blue card is the accelerated fast track into the German job market. The regular work visa does need a little bit of more processing in order for you to get one. There are two main things that need to be done for someone to get the regular work visa. Number one is that the Federal Employment Agency has to do a priority check. So it's not a priority check-in like flying, it's a priority check. It is called Vorrangprüfung in German, which means that the agency has to check whether or not there's anyone from Germany, the EU, the European Economic Area, Switzerland, or any refugee with a priority status in Germany that could be employed for that position by that company. So it is checked that there's no one above you with a higher priority on the list of possible applicants for the job. So that is one thing that needs to be done, and it needs to be the result of the evaluation has to be that you are the, let's say, the person with the highest priority for that position, and then the company is allowed to employ you on that position within their company. And the second thing that the Federal Employment Agency is doing is they are checking whether or not the environment, the circumstances of the position are normal for that type of position in the job market. So they see, are the working conditions similar to what a average position in the market would look like for this. So they check, is the salary, are the working hours regular to what a position like this would look like. So they want to make sure that there's no exploitation going on, that you don't get a very low salary for a lot of hours. And this is, of course, also always done to see, okay, to check whether or not this was a fake job just created to get someone in the country, but this is an actual job. So this is not someone employed for zero or for €1 just to have someone work there and then as a fake job opening to get someone in. So it's checked whether or not it's a legitimate job, whether all the conditions are correct for that job. So those two things are checked by the Federal Employment Agency, whether or not there's anyone with a higher priority on the list and whether or not the job is legit by checking the working conditions. If you are from the United States, Canada, Australia, Japan, South Korea, New Zealand, or Israel, you do not have to apply for a visa when coming to Germany for work, when you've been offered a job position that does not fulfill the requirements for an EU blue card. So you do not need to apply for a visa, but you can come to Germany directly and apply for a residence permit for the purpose of employment. Then, however, the whole process has to start because you need to submit all the documents that are needed, and this will take a while, and you will not be sure if the outcome is positive or negative. So the check by the Federal Employment Agency could also be negative because they say, well, there are enough people in Germany who could do the job that you are proposed for. That's why they will not give the permission to the company to employ you. So this would take a while and you would have to wait for a while to get the result. So if you want to make sure this process could also be started already from your home embassy, and then you would have the result without having to go to Germany. If you are from a country other than those 7 countries, you need to apply for a national visa for the purposes of employment, and then if you do get to Germany, you have to change that visa into a residence permit. To accelerate the process of the Federal Employment Agency checking the application, the employer can do a lot of things to accelerate the process. Though they can inquire about a pre-check of the position. So they can send a template of the job description to the Federal Employment Agency to say, this is the job that we want to give to someone else from outside of Germany, outside the EU. And they can also send a template of your profile to the agency. And then the agency would say, yes, this would be someone who could be employed for that position. This would be a result that would be given back to the employer that you could take then with you to the embassy, saying, this is a preliminary check of whether or not this would be successful. This is not a final statement, but this would be a pre-check called Vorabprüfung in Germany. That would be a document that you could take to the embassy and say, okay, this is now the result, and the whole application process for the visa could be accelerated quite a bit, because otherwise the embassy in your country would be in contact with the authorities in Germany to see whether or not this would be approved or not. So if the employer already does that beforehand and gets the result, then you take that result and show the embassy, and the embassy knows that the authorities in Germany have already checked and gave their preliminary thumbs up to that. That you would take, makes the case for your visa stronger, and then you come to Germany on a national visa. You apply for a residence permit, and then they have to recheck it again. I mean, it's a final check. Usually, then it should be okay, because they already said once it is okay. And if nothing is changing majorly, then you will get the residence permit, and you will be able to work in Germany on a residence permit for the purpose of employment. This resident permit for the purpose of working is then fixed on the job that you used to get it. So the job that you received first that help you to get the residence permit, that residence permit is linked to that job. If you are switching job or you're let go of that job, you always have to contact the foreigners office to see how your status will change, if you already have a new job in place or not, because it could, in some case, endanger your residence permit. And if you lose your job and you don't get a new one, and you are still not able to apply for a permanent residency, anything like this, you might be of danger of just then having to leave Germany again. So this is something that whenever something is changing in your job situation, you need to contact the authorities and educate them about what your situation is and see what you have to do. You will be able to apply for permanent residency after 5 years of having this residence permit for the purpose of employment. And after you have the 5 years completed, you can then be eligible to apply for a permanent residency, which then gives you an indefinite amount of time that you can stay in Germany. So let's quickly recap the regular work visa. It's a visa for everyone who wants to work in Germany and doesn't qualify for the EU Blue Card. What is then done is that the Federal Employment Agency has to check two things. Number one, if there is anyone in Germany, the EU, European Economic Area, or anyone else with a higher priority above you who could take the job. If there's not, good, you are allowed to be employed by the company. And number two, whether or not the job is legitimate and all the working conditions are correct. Those are the two things that the employment agency is checking. Anyone from the 7 countries I mentioned in the beginning of the video, you technically don't need to apply for a visa. You can come to Germany and apply for a residence permit. Then, though, the federal agency would have to still check those two factors, and you will not be able to work while that is going on, and you will not be sure of the result. So you could start the process already with the embassy in your country to see whether or not this could be successful or not. For anyone outside of those countries, you anyways have to apply for a national visa, and then if you come to Germany, switch it to a residence permit. The employer can do a lot to accelerate the process. They can hand over documents describing your profile and the job position to the Federal Employment Agency, who will then have a pre-check and give the result to the employer. If it's positive, you can take that result with you, show the embassy, and that way the embassy doesn't have to do it themselves, speeds up the process, gets you the visa, and then once you are in Germany, you apply for the residence permit. It is very likely then that you also get the residence permit. If you do get the residence permit, you can work in Germany. It is fixed to the employer though, so whenever something changes, you have to inform authorities. And after 5 years of having continuously worked in Germany, you are allowed to apply for permanent residency in Germany. So I hope this gave some clarity on the topic, on what the visa is, what you need for it, in which cases it is applicable, and I hope that this gave you some insights and inspiration to start your journey into Germany.